My objective is to use ChatGPT to create a full stack Spring Boot jQuery application. I'm going to start by telling ChatGPT to create a create endpoint, which consumes a JSON representation of the person Pojo to persist. So let's just say I would like a person controller defined using Spring Boot, which has a create endpoint, which looks like this, and consumes a JSON, which looks like this. Let's ask it to define the read, read all, update, and delete methods for the person controller. Please provide the definition for the read, read all, update by ID, and delete by ID endpoints for the person controller class. It looks like it didn't use a person repository, so let's ask it to modify its definition such that it does. Please modify the person controller definition such that it uses a person repository which extends CRUD repository. Let's ask it to create the pom.xml now. Please provide the pom.xml for this project. Let's start copying some of this stuff into an IntelliJ project. Let's open up IntelliJ. Let's click on new project. Let's click on Maven archetype. Let's name this GPT Spring app. Let's click on archetype. Let's click on Maven archetype. Let's click on create. Let's copy the pom.xml that GPT provided us. Copy, paste. Let's copy the person repository. So we'll expand source, main. We should have a directory named Java here. And within Java, we should have our domain, com.github.curriculeon in this case. And then the name of the class, person repository in this case. And we'll paste over top of it. Let's make sure that we resync all of our Maven dependencies. Let's click this little M right here. Let's go back to ChatGPT. Let's copy the person controller definition. Let's make a new class named person controller and paste over top of it. Let's go back to GPT. Let's copy the person definition. Let's create a new class named person. Let's paste over top of it. Let's generate the getters and setters. Let's ask for the main application definition. Please provide the definition for the main application. Let's copy this definition. Let's create a new class named demo application. Let's paste over top of it. Let's get rid of this additional package statement. Let's ask it to provide the front end. Let's start out by asking it for the index.html. Please define an index.html which can be placed in such that it has an input field for ID, first name, last name, and a submit button which on click will invoke a respective $.ajax function to communicate to the Spring Boot application. To get this information in chunks rather than all at once, I'm going to ask it to limit its response to just the index.html, and then I will follow it up with a request to have the service.js defined as well. Let's first ensure that the JavaScript code is written in a separate file and not written between script tags. So let's ask it to do that. Please refrain from using script tags in your HTML definition. Instead, I would like to have the $.ajax calls being made from a service.js, which is a sibling to the index.html. Please define the index.html such that it imports the aforementioned service.js. Please do not provide the definition of the service.js until prompted in the upcoming requests. For now, just provide the definition of the index.html. Let's ask it for the service.js now. Please define the aforementioned service.js such that it has functions which call a respective Spring Boot endpoint. There should be 5 functions to define: create, read by ID, read all, update by ID, and delete by ID. I'd rather have it use the DOM to inject respective person objects in. So I'm going to ask it to please redefine service.js such that it uses document.getElementById.value to inject respective arguments into each AJAX request. Okay, so I'm pretty pleased with this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back to the Spring Boot application. I'm going to create a directory named static. And within static, I'm going to create a file named service.js. And I'm going to paste. And I'm going to come back to the index.html, copy that, create a new file named index.html, paste, and I'm going to modify line 18 so that it corresponds to the methods that we just generated in the service.js. So create person, read person by ID, read person by ID, read all persons, update person by ID, update person by ID, delete person by ID, delete person by ID. Then I'll copy, undo, paste, copy, undo, paste, copy, undo, paste, copy, undo, paste. And now I'm going to configure the person controller so that it has the @cross-origins annotation, which will allow this index.html and JavaScript code to communicate to the Spring Boot application. I'll go to the person controller and I'll add right here @cross-origins, origins equals star. And in the service.js, I just want to make sure I add a few headers here, and here. Before we run this application, let's make sure that the person class has the @entity annotation as well as the @ID and @generated_value annotation on there, because without that, it won't be able to be recognized as a persistent type by the repository nor by the controller. So we'll just need to add code there and import. And now let's run the application. Let's go to localhost :8080. Let's say 1 Leon Hunter submit. So when we say submit, it looks like it says it can't find the create endpoint. So if we go back to the person controller, we can see that it actually has this API/person prefix. We can also see that all of these buttons say submit, and that's not very helpful. So let's change that very quickly. Let's go to the index.html, change this to say create, read all, update, delete. And now let's modify the service.js to reflect what the person controller request mapping has as its prefix. I'm just going to do a find and replace on open quote / and replace it with open quote paste / and hit replace all. And now the URLs look like they've been updated respectively. Let's rerun the application. Let's refresh the page. Let's enter some data. Let's submit the data. Let's say read all. Looks like when we say read all, it says that's a bad request. So let's go back to the person controller. Let's write on line 25 / read all and rerun the application. Let's refresh the page. Let's enter some data. Let's click on create. Let's click on read all. And you can see that upon reading from the database, Leon Hunter was persisted. Let's try updating. Let's submit. Looks like it says it can't find this endpoint. So let's go back to the person controller and you can see the update person by ID is indeed missing the / update prefix. It looks like on line 20, we're missing the word / read. And on line 39, we're also missing the words / delete. So let's rerun the application now. Let's go back to localhost 8080. Let's refresh the page. Let's add some data. Let's click on create. Let's click on read all. You can see that Leon Hunter was returned. Let's update the data. Let's click on read all. You can see the data has been updated. Let's read the data. You can see the data is fetched. Let's delete the data. Let's read after deleting. You can see the array is empty. So now that we verified that the application works, let's ask ChatGPT to generate a style.css for us so this doesn't look so dull. I'm going to say, please provide a style.css for the following index.html. I'm going to copy this code. I'm going to go back to IntelliJ. I'm going to create a new file named style.css. I'm going to paste. I'm going to modify the index.html so that it imports the style.css. I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to rerun the application. I'm going to go back to localhost 8080. I'm going to refresh the page. And now you can see I have a neat little application here.